Hi everyone. So today I'm here with my friend Yuli Van Brakel,
Hi,
who
everybody.
I love and adore, and unfortunately don't get to see enough. So I'm so glad she's here with me.
We're here together.
Here
We're
together.
gonna have a powerful conversation
Powerful
today.
conversation. So we were just catching up a little bit and talking about my divorce, which was about little over 2 years ago, in May of 2017, I guess. And just some of the changes that I've felt and experienced since then. And so I wanted to share some of that because I think sometimes as we're growing and evolving, we don't always talk honestly about these very difficult challenges. And I think divorce is probably one of the most life-altering and difficult things that anyone will go through. And hopefully no one has to. Hopefully you stay married for another 30 years.
But we were having a conversation, and she was making such an amazing reflection about it that we thought that it was a great idea to get together. So we were talking about how the process was after your divorce.
Yeah. So what I would.
So get closer to here because I want people to see you. Okay.
But I want them to see you too.
Yeah.
So here's really what it comes down to. I think is what I felt right at the time of the divorce, and even before, was guilt, overwhelming guilt at the decision. I had, screwing up everyone's life. I was blowing up my husband's life, blowing up my kid's life, and
how long took you to get there, to make the decision? It was something that it was sudden, or you has been thinking about what you want to do with your life?
It's hard because I'd hate for, Rick to hear this, but I would say I probably woke up every day for 2 years thinking about whether or not I could stay in this marriage. And it wasn't to say that those were, 2 bad years. It's just, and as I got closer and closer to the decision, it was just harder and harder to answer yes. And so I felt a tremendous amount of guilt, and I did for a long time. And I had a hard time articulating why I was leaving because, anyone who knows, my ex-husband, he's an amazing guy. And we still have an amazing relationship, actually, which is part of what makes him amazing. And yeah, we've done it right, I think. If you can do a divorce right, we've done it right.
Yeah, that's another video.
Yeah, that's another video. We'll talk about that. But what I think I'm learning now is now with time and reflection, I have so much more empathy for myself and so much less guilt. I see now more clearly the neglect that was happening in our relationship and why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I would have never said 2 years ago that the reason why I'm leaving him is because he neglects me. And now I know that, that there was I'd be having a conversation with him and he'd leave the room and then come back into the room a few minutes later and I would pick up the conversation as if, and that was normal. It kind of became normal.
So how was the process? Talk to us about maybe how was the process between making the decision and the transition until the point you are now. That's an easy road, or how
No, well, it's been I think there's been many ups and downs. It was awful to have this secret inside me that I wanted a divorce and not be clear about how to articulate that or whether I was ready for it or what if I really wanted it. And then even when I came to the decision, it was horrible to separate the family. But then it was also incredibly freeing. I just had this 6-month high. It was horrible to say that, but I had this amazing 6-month high, when I decorated my own place and I just got so into, being on my own and taking care of myself again and making choices for myself. And, the opposite of what happens when you get married and you get to have fun putting a house together. I got to put a house together myself. I got to make my own rules again. And I just was ecstatic. And then I crashed again because I thought that I would meet someone right away and that I don't know, like all of a sudden life would continue to be this amazing thing. And instead, it got harder. Like, I realized all the things that a partnership, all the benefits to a partnership, right? Like, all of a sudden I'm a single mom and I'm still traveling as much for work. I still have 2 kids to take care of, and I don't have anyone to help me. Like, I'm like on my own, and all the things he would do now came onto my plate, and I was already, overwhelmed. So then I realized how much it just sucks, honestly, to be a single mom. And then I, wasn't really enjoying dating, and I wasn't enjoying anyone I was meeting. And so then it was just like, oh my gosh, like, what is my life? And
did you regret at any point, or that's something that you were at the whole time in your first stage and your second stage, the whole time you never doubt yourself? Because I think that's something that I think will be hard for me.
Yeah.
Maybe in the second stage that you name after, all adrenaline.
Did I make the wrong decision?
Maybe you start doubting yourself. What would you say for people that maybe is in that moment right now?
Yeah. Well, I do think that you doubt yourself because it's such a big decision. I doubted myself before I made it. I just doubted myself when I made it. I doubted myself after I made it. There were times when I thought maybe I'll see if he wants to get back together, but not for the right reasons.
Okay.
And it was out of loneliness. It was out of fear. It wasn't out of love. And I think part of that was because one of the things I had to learn in this whole process was self-love. And as selfish as I am, that was something I didn't know, I didn't have. And I know that sounds funny because what I've learned, and this is a book, it's not just something to say, but the irony is once I learned self-love is when I became more selfless. Because when I didn't have self-love, I demanded that everybody give me what I needed, that my needs be met first, always. And it wasn't until I learned to love myself first that I could put other people's needs first. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but that's the irony is...
How did you get to that point? If you have to tell me what to do, or if you have to give me an advice about how to self-love, how to learn, how to love ourselves, what would you tell me?
What's funny is I think I thought I was really good at self-love because I would make sure I exercised, I would make sure I took myself to the spa, I would make sure to make time for myself. So I thought I loved myself, and really that was me being selfish and making sure my needs were met. But that wasn't the same thing as self-love. Self-love is when you value yourself enough to make the right decisions for your life, And that meant leaving a marriage that no longer worked. That meant, changing the friendships in your life that no longer added value. It meant dating the right guys and the right people, being around the right people. It meant really, is this person good enough for me? And I know that sounds, I don't know, a little pretentious, but you have value, you have worth. And if people are not going to bring you that same equal value, if they're not going to come to you with the same, willingness to love and be open and what's the word I'm looking for? Can they be emotionally available to you? Can they be fulfilling? Do they offer something in a partnership? That mutual, reciprocity, And I think for a long time, allowed people in my life, including my ex-husband, to not always reciprocate that, to just take what I could get and then, assume that was enough. And that was not self-love.
So I would like to ask you, has happiness changed meaning for you? Has happiness now and with all you have learned in this
Yes.
process looks different or
Yes,
not?
very different. And a big part of why is because I'm not seeking happiness anymore. I'm seeking peace, and peace only through surrendering to the fact that I know I'm not in control of this bigger picture, this bigger process, and I'm learning to, no, I have learned to trust that process. And when things are bad and when you're feeling low, like I've learned to just, okay, today's a bad day, or today I'm feeling this way, and just trust that even if you're in that place for longer than you want to be, there's learning and meaning in that. There's light from being in the dark. And then when you come out of it, you can see it. You can't see it when you're in it. You know, like, it's hard. It's like you can't see when you're sitting in a dark room. Everything's blind. You're blind to everything. But when you come out of it, then you have the reflection. And so that's, for me, that's been my last couple of years is, and I was just saying to Yuli when this conversation started is, I mean, I'm really, in the last few months, coming out of this huge awakening and kind of spiritual growth where I finally, I think, understand more what this divorce means to me beyond just separating from my husband. It's about, again, the self-love. Where do I want to take my life now? Being able to surrender to whatever comes, and not expecting life to live life on my terms, but to live life on life's terms, and to accept that what comes is, you know, part of the process. And this might sound contradictory because, you know, Eula and I talk all the time about goals, and there's nobody I know who's more goal oriented than this one. But you know, you gotta set goals. You've gotta push yourself. You've got to challenge yourself. But at the same time, you're in constant tension of this setting goals and allowing, you know, driving things forward and just surrendering, and knowing when to surrender. And that process is probably one of the hardest things I've ever learned, and I think is the hardest thing for anyone to learn. And for me, you know, that came from the divorce process.
So just to wrap up, you talk about this first stage, that second stage. What do you think is coming next? And what would you tell to any women that are going through or are facing any of those stages that are coming from making a decision like what you made?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think now, of course, I would love a long-term relationship. I'd love, you know, the next phase to be finding the right person for me and getting married. But at the same time, more importantly, as I've just described, what this phase is living life on life's terms. So I get up every day with the plan of, you know, what do I need to accomplish that day for me, for my family, for my career, and I go about my day. And I am clear about my intention of wanting a relationship, but at the same time, I'm not living with this expectation or this dependency that things are going to happen the way I want them when on my terms. You know, like I just have surrendered that. So this phase is really about just kind of taking life on life's terms and seeing what that brings. And I don't know, because I've never lived like that before. So I can't really tell you. All I can tell you is that in the last few months that I've started to live life on life's terms, it has been so much more peaceful and enjoyable. I'm happy. That's where the happiness comes in, because I can start my day every day without feeling like I'm already 10 steps back. Because when you're focused on all the things you can't control, you wake up feeling in a kind of like you're in a ditch, or that you're trying to dig yourself out of. And that's where the depression comes in. That's where the anxiety comes in. That's where the judgment for yourself and others comes in. And that's not how you want to live your life. So phase 3 is the beginning of, you know, surrendering and living life on life's we'll see how it goes.
Good. So we will be here to
Yeah.
keep
Well,
asking you about
there will
it.
be more for
Yes.
sure to share.
So, well, thank you for sharing, because I know this is very
Yeah.
personal, but this is it. Angela Siholi sharing her stuff, because I asked her to do it. So here you have the privilege to
Thank
learn
you,
from the
everyone.
best.
Good to hear from you. Good to talk to you in this digital way.